All right.
Hi, this is Amanda from Speaking English Today, and thank you so much for coming on to my show. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Fernando Lídio. I live in São Paulo City, Brazil, and I work as an English teacher.
That's awesome. We're both English teachers.
Yes,
I
we're colleagues.
remember us, yeah, I remember us talking about this before. How is it going over where you are?
Well, at least in my city, so far so good. We are doing okay here. However, throughout the country, the outbreak is a big issue nowadays, and we are all going through some setbacks due to it. But
Yeah,
it's
that's,
inevitable to talk about that.
yeah, exactly. I think, regardless of all the setbacks, I think this might be a good thing for education. All of the teachers suddenly being forced to use technology 100% for the classrooms. What do you think?
Sure, absolutely. It's like a priority. It's a priority for me nowadays, and thankfully, I am able to keep my appointments using these devices.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, suddenly all around the world, you see teachers forced to teach their classes online now. And whereas originally there would have been a lot of, teachers not really comfortable with that or not sure, at this point they just need to jump in. And sure, a lot of mistakes will be made, but I think good things could come from this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I took a while to my students get used to it. However, eventually they accepted and they adapted pretty well.
Nice.
Yes,
That's great. And
yes.
I've been learning online and teaching online for a long time. I definitely see it as an excellent resource that sometimes learning and teaching online provides you things that you could never do in the classroom.
Exactly. Yes. For example, sharing your screen and then preparing things in advance can be an asset for the classes.
Yeah, definitely. And while the teacher is talking, all of the students can be engaged in the classroom through chatting, and while you're teaching, you can see the chats come up and there's more interaction there. It's not just on the teacher or we have to take turns talking.
Indeed. I have to especially create and develop this energy during the class, show I am present, be aware of their mistakes, and pin down where it needs to be corrected. And I show them that all the time, that regardless of being far from them, I am actually very present at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's how I feel. I have students all over the world, but as I teach them online, it doesn't feel like they're that far.
All right, amazing. That sounds incredible.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get into your questions. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh, sure. I mean, I had written a few in your page, but now I can't
Yes.
recall precisely my order. I would have
Oh,
to.
no worries. I have them right here.
Oh, great. Yes. I hope I
Um,
haven't exaggerated.
it's no problem, no problem. So one of the questions you had was, what are the best short-term strategies to memorize more words?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this is the best, but I would say some of the best ones would be when you're trying to remember words. You really want to put them in context and try to attach some kind of emotional connection or um, the different senses. So if you think of a word, you want to try to think about what does it look like, what does it smell like, what does it taste like, and try to incorporate as many senses as you can, but also try to connect it to your past experiences growing up. what kind of emotional connection could you make to this? Or maybe come up with like a silly situation that would include this word, and the situation's so funny you wouldn't forget what this word means, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
That's one
It
of my
sounds like a good strategy.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of my favorite, because the more connections our brain can use to connect to this word, the easier it will be to recall that word when you go to speak or write.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It's good because this is the kind of issue I have with my students, to try to help them memorize more words and be aware of how important it is to create a strategy for that. Some of them write on random papers, random pieces of paper, and then also on the books itself to translate. And I think it's not the best idea, because this information has to be accessible and practical. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And if you're learning through translation, it's not a good strategy because it will really have a negative impact on your fluency. Because while you're talking in English, you're thinking, what is this word in English? Rather than coming up with the word immediately. So you're practicing translation in your mind. It's definitely, especially at the intermediate level, you want to completely get away from translation whenever possible.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's quite effective.
Yeah, yeah, use those strategies that I mentioned before. Have example sentences with your words. There's so many great resources. You can use dictionaries. Vocabulary.com is an amazing one. Vocabulary.com is like a dictionary, but they kind of explain the definition in more of like you asking your friend, what does this word mean, rather than something super formal and sometimes hard to understand.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yes,
Oh,
I will
yeah,
definitely take a look on it. Yes.
definitely. Also, vocabulary.com uses that word that you looked up. It has a bunch of example sentences pulled from different articles in different topics. So you can see the sentence with your word in it, and you click it, and you can open that article that that sentence comes from.
Neat. That sounds great. I usually
Yeah.
tell my students to keep track of their new vocabulary in two different notebooks. One, a notepad for short terms, things very quickly you can access, and a bigger one for large explanations, for more precise information. And they are trying to adapt this way. Another thing I started developing with them was using the spidergrams during the classes with drawing notebooks, to access a bigger array of words, for example, parts of the body, and then we break down to different parts in order to see the bigger picture, how the words are related. Anyway, these things.
That's a great idea. Yeah, and I'd recommend making sure that learning your vocabulary words never becomes a chore. Like if you're learning vocabulary in a way that you just hate having to learn this way, try something different. The more you dislike the way you're learning English, the slower you're going to learn.
Indeed.
Yeah, like some people might love drawing and that's a great way for learning for them. Some people might not like it, so a different way would be better.
Yes, yes. I should consider the students are different among themselves, and the approach should also take that into account.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I mostly teach adults, so that's always on my mind, but I know with kids it can be a bit different.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I only teach adults as well. Yes, I
Oh,
teach in
nice.
companies. Yes, I teach in companies.
That's
Yes.
great. That's really good. That's something I've always wanted to do, and I never really got into it. Um,
Yes, I have been doing that for more than 10 years now. Since I finished my English course, I started teaching in some companies and I never stopped it.
oh, cool.
Yes, yes.
Are there any questions that you can think of that you want to ask me?
Oh, yes, wow, there were a few. I was thinking. And how do you deal with some students with more difficulties in the beginning level? I mean, they seem to be blocked, and it's hard to reach them. How do you have any strategy for that? Sometimes I think I don't want to believe they are lost causes and it's impossible to teach them. And but unfortunately, after 1 year, 2 years trying all kinds of approaches, I seem to fail miserably in these attempts, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Do you have you had this kind of experiences with the students with more difficulties?
Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of experiences, especially teaching younger kids and teenagers. To get a better idea of the context, what age group are you thinking?
Well, adults, they range from 20, 22 to 40 years old, you know. And the older they are, the harder it is to reach them and to make them have considerable improvement. I mean, it's like they erase what I teach. You know, I teach it as clearly as possible, giving examples, keeping track of their mistakes, and trying to control that, but it escapes my control when they go back home and don't do what I say, you know, don't study more. I don't know what I can do. It seems helpless at
Oh,
times.
I think I can kind of relate. I haven't had this exact experience with adults. Mostly the adults that I teach, um, they reach out to me and they find me, so they're already super motivated to improve their English. Um, but yeah, with adults, I've tried many different strategies. Um, so I'm trying to think of, I mean, aside from just using a certain kind of personality in the class, which seems to work, like just being like super enthusiastic and really animated in the class. Like adults that are not so motivated seem to like that. But the way I can relate to this is I do have some adult students and clients that they are motivated, they do want to improve their English, but they have no time. So all they have is the class time, and that's it. So I know that once our hour is over, they're going to go back and start working, and they're not going to practice their English outside of the class. That becomes a huge challenge because if you're only studying English for 2 hours a week, you're really only maintaining your English level. You're not really improving, you know? I mean, maybe, but super slowly, and you're forgetting so much that it's like you take 2 steps forward and 4 steps back, you know?
Yes. It gives me this feeling. It gives me this feeling. It
Yeah.
keeps my control. I mean, I even lost two students recently because they couldn't reach their grade, you know, the necessary grade to be maintained in a course to receive the benefit. And in this company, it is mandatory to study English, so they are forced to do it, whether they like it or not. And it's quite a challenge for me to make them to maintain their focus, you know, to help them is a big challenge.
Yeah, that's the thing with teaching adults is with kids, you really can just kind of direct them and they'll just follow, you know. But with adults, they have to be motivated and they have to see a purpose and a reason in their own life to learn this. Because if not, if they don't see any benefit to this or a reason for doing this, they could just decide not to try and or not to really be that motivated. And there are theories based on this, and it's true. The adult has to want to learn themselves in order to really learn and benefit from the class.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is hard. I mean, we cannot control exactly what they're going to do in their spare time. I try as much as possible to be close, to establish a relationship with them, and then reach them on WhatsApp, email, send extra material, show I am engaged into teaching them. Even so, it's for each one to decide what to do with their own destiny. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. At the end of the day, it's really the adult's decision whether they want to learn or not. That's a really good question. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I definitely have experiences, not with adults, but with older teenagers and adolescents that really did not improve after many years and many hours of classes because they just, at the end of the day, they didn't even want to be there. So yeah, it's a slow drag up the hill if that's the case.
Yes. It's like pulling. It's
Like pulling teeth.
like pulling teeth. Yes, I was going to say that. Yes, like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
It'll be like that. Yes. Even so, there are a few who overcome their limitations, and despite hating, they start off saying, "Teacher, I hate English. Help me." Wow, it's a challenge. It's like,
I
but
can't help you there.
so
You have to
yeah,
change
even
your
so,
mindset.
exactly. Uh, in try to find your motivation, and what would it be to maintain your job, to make a move to another area. It's up to you. It's in your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
There's a saying in English, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yes, exactly. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's every individual's personal choice whether they want to learn or not, And from what I see in teaching, there are so many people out there that are desperate to learn. They want to learn so bad, and this is what I really love to focus on, helping those people that are just it's like it's a burning desire and passion every day when they're thinking about learning English. That's their struggle, is how do I learn faster? How do I learn more? I love to help people in that situation.
Same here. Same here. It's so rewarding to have those students. I have quite a few who are exactly like this, and it's really a great experience, and it motivates me a lot to keep working and wake up early every day and go to their companies in order to help them. So this is part of the life of as a teacher, which I do enjoy, and I can't see myself living without.
Yeah, that's most of my teaching. Is I would say most of the time my challenge as a teacher is because I get these highly motivated students. My challenge is to keep them motivated, keep the momentum going, and when they start to feel like they're not learning fast enough, or they start to feel bad about their English, or they're forgetting things, to help them out with those problems.
Yes, yes, exactly. At the end of the day, I always feel that it's my fault. It's like if I lost him, it's my fault. It's on me. I have to figure out a way to maintain their attention, to keep them excited about it, and it takes a long way to do it.
Yeah. For adults, like if you have classes of adults that don't have a very strong motivation to learn English, I would not be afraid to bring games into the classroom. In my experience, some teachers think that it's strange to have games in adult classes, but adults are very competitive. They like the games.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah.
Their attention doubles, like
Yeah. And that
a
alone,
healthy
winning the game.
competition. Yes,
Yeah,
a healthy competition. Yes,
exactly.
I have.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Healthy competitions. I had a class full of adults that they were preparing for IELTS speaking and they kept hesitating and going, So I paired them and I had each one of them ask each other a question. And every time they said or the other one slammed their hand on the table.
Wow.
They loved that. It's like they were catching each other.
Yes, enough with vague language here. Enough with all this.
And that was their
I should watch
fluency.
myself for that. I should watch myself for that.
Yeah, yeah, and that was their fluency practice. And I was teaching
Amazing.
them to help each other learn English. Um, and you had another question.
Oh
What would
yes.
be the ideal setup? The ideal step by step for a beginner. Oh,
Mhm.
that's
Yes.
a hard question. I think it really, really depends on the individual. Everyone's going to experience something different and have different options available to them. But if you really want to improve and learn really fast, I would say make sure that you're practicing all four language skills every day and you practice like about 3 hours a day 5 days a week. um, that would definitely be ideal, and learn the way that is fun for you. If you are just beginning to learn a language, you have a huge journey ahead of you. Like you need to climb Mount Everest. you know So it's got to be fun. You've got to find ways to make it as fun and interesting as possible. And don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to learn from material that's so advanced, that's so beyond you, that you're having to look up every single word to understand what you're reading. It's too advanced. You've got to have an incredible amount of patience because it's going to be a long journey, but definitely put in the time and enjoy the process.
Great tip. Great tip. Indeed. Yes.
um, yeah, another question that you had was, what do you think about the lexical approach? I'd actually like to ask you this question. What do you think about the lexical approach?
I've been recently thought about that, so it's hard for me to explain. I haven't used it yet, so I would like to see if you think it is effective in order to bring to classes to, or even for me as an English teacher. What do you think about that? I've
Um,
heard of it as a new thing, as a something to be aware of.
yeah. Yeah, it's been around for a little bit, but it's just starting to gain popularity. And I definitely see it coming up more and more, and I was curious to see what it is exactly. And it's learning English through phrases. So
Right.
from what I've been able to read, and I don't know much about it, but basically, instead of learning grammar structures and vocabulary words and using your vocabulary words into these grammar formulas, which is how we learn, when we go to an English course, that's how all the
Yes.
books are structured, this grammar structure and this vocabulary, and put them together. It takes a very different approach, and I really like it. The lexical approach is where you're learning chunks of the language, phrases of the language, words that normally form together. So you're not really learning the grammar structures. You're learning the language in a more natural way. And one reason why I really like that is because with the grammar approach, that, you know, the traditional grammar approach, once people get to the advanced level, they make a lot of mistakes with articles and prepositions. And that's the thing, is like with articles and prepositions, there are so many rules and so many exceptions to the rules that you really can't learn articles and prepositions that way. So once they get to these advanced levels, they're making mistakes with articles and prepositions all the time. They just haven't learned the language naturally that way. So with this, like learning through phrases and chunks of the language, you would already have that naturally embedded in the way that you're learning. So you would be less likely to make these mistakes.
Okay, okay, great.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it
it
also makes
sounds
you more fluent, I think. If you're trying to, and I see this a lot with my students, if they're like trying to think of um, grammatical structures in their minds while they're speaking, they really have to stop or go slow, and their fluency is then choppy and their pronunciation sounds really unnatural because they're not thinking about how they sound, they're thinking about how to put the words together. Yeah.
I see. Remarkable, remarkable. It's a lot to think.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely becoming popular. I see more teachers using this.
I see. I listened to a podcast about this topic, and it was quite interesting. However, I lack the way to handle that. So I wanted to see what is your perspective on the topic.
Yeah, I think in a classroom setting, it would be more challenging to apply this because all of the books and materials that we use for group classes,
Mhm.
it's all this grammatic, you know, the grammar approach. But
Yes.
with my private classes where I don't use these books, um, I haven't actually been in a classroom for quite a number of years. I've just been teaching one-on-one online for quite a long time now. So in that setting, it's much easier because I'm not using English books. I'm using my own materials that I make. And when it comes to like them learning vocabulary, a lot of it is they do it on their own while they're studying for homework. So then it's easier to apply because I just tell them, okay, this is how you do it, you know?
See.
Yeah.
Yes. All
But
right.
yeah, I mean, knowing this has definitely gotten me away from writing lists of words, single words. So when you're studying vocabulary, yeah, I'd study it in phrases.
Sounds more effective instead of just reading the words isolated. You have a context applied to it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it makes way
Very
more
good.
sense to do that. Yeah. Yeah, I like that
Okay.
approach.
All right. Sounds
Did you
great.
have any other questions that you can think of?
Well, I only thought right now, you mentioned to me you teach online. How many students do you teach at once? One to one, or can you handle groups like 6 people at the same time in a conference call?
I've been teaching one-to-one. I've seen group classes before, but I never really tried to. I think with some classes, like maybe math or something like science, it would be easier to use this kind of video chat. But
Yes,
with language learning, if you have a group class, it becomes more difficult because my approach to language learning is trying to get my student to speak as much as possible. But if you have like 5 people, then everyone has to take turns. It's not like a classroom setting where I can group people into small groups and say, okay, go ahead and practice this in your groups, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. With this kind of like video chat, it's one at a time. No one can talk while another person's talking, otherwise, no one can hear anyone, you know? So it's definitely more challenging. I I would see it more as like uh, I don't really know too much, but it seems more like a lecture style or a take turn style
Yeah.
than, you know,
Yes, they're entitled to fractions of the class, so it's inevitable to control it more.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you're definitely getting more direct attention on a student than trying to manage a whole class doing something at the same time. But, you know, if you have an hour-long lesson and 5 students plus you need to talk, how much practice is each student getting in the class, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, I would say, like, if I had a classroom setting, maybe I would have students, like, I assign something and then group students into chats so they like chat one-on-one with each other. Well, I take turns chatting one-on-one with students, so there's more practice going on.
I see.
Hard to manage though.
Yes, a little. I had this group of 5 people at the same time, beginning level, and it was very difficult to handle that, to make them practice accordingly, and eventually they dismantled.
Yeah, I could see that. Um, a lot of students especially at the beginning level, when they're just starting to learn English for the first time, that's a rough time. I would say that's usually when people give up because when they start learning to learn a new language, they realize, wow, this is hard, you know, this is a
Wow.
lot.
Yes.
That's why
My
I say
former
it's like,
teacher,
yeah,
yes, my former teacher used to say, never tell the students it's going to be hard. You have to make it as easy as possible. Say it's going to be a smooth sail. All right, we're going to be together during the way, and it's hard. I mean, I feel like I'm lying when I do that. So I
yeah,
just say you got to be ready for the next stage and be ready to perform as much as possible. Because there will be more words. There will be a huge flow of information to process, and you have to be on top of that. You can't make mistakes, the same mistakes with the same words you have already written down. So how can you avoid that? See.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Honestly, personally, like if I wanted to learn a new language absolutely from scratch, I think my ideal situation would be like, let's say I want to learn Spanish, for example. The ideal situation for me would be trying to be together with a Spanish speaking family that hardly speaks any English at all, maybe none, and like spend my days with them and just do my best to communicate with them while we go through our daily activities. I couldn't imagine a faster way of learning a language other than that. That'd be the ideal situation.
Sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. I agree.
Well, yeah, thank you again so much for coming on to my show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for receiving me here. I
Definitely.
had a good time. Had a good time.
Same here. Yes, and I hope everything goes well with your classes. And
Okay. Thank you.
definitely.
All positivity is welcome at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Good luck to you too.
Good luck to you too. Have a great day and thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye. Take care.
You too.